I'll stand aside.
And he can stand beside the video since he'll be talking through the video.
Great. Then everybody else can stand on the side if they want, or if there's something over there. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nan Whaley, Mayor of the Dayton. Have a lot of folks from the police department here, but I'm here with Chief Biehl, City Manager Shelley Dickstein, and City Commissioner Matt Joseph. Gosh, it's been a few days since we've had an update. This weekend, we're really pleased with just the outpouring of support that we've received from the community. You know, I've attended, I think it's, six visitations or funerals. The families, I think, were very pleased to see the number of people that came and supported them, and they're going through a very difficult time, obviously, now, and really just asking people to continue to keep them in your prayers and thoughts as they're moving through this incredible grief. And the Dayton Fund Foundation is continuing to see strong support and appreciate the support that regular folks and businesses and pretty much everybody of all stripes coming together to that fund, which I think is not surprising to me, considering how cohesive this community is. We're super pleased Sunday John Legend came with the Everytown Survivor Network to really have a great event with people that have survived the shooting, and quite a few of them were at Blind Bob's to see a really powerful performance, and I think that was therapeutic, frankly, for some there Sunday, and so we were grateful that we were able to help out there too, and we'll continue to think of ways that we can be helpful both to the district, to the survivors, and to the community at large, at the same time while pushing forward common sense gun control legislation. We have a couple of updates for you. First, we're going to have City Manager Shelley Dickstein talk about just the totality of the organization and what this organization has done during this tragic event. And then Chief Biehl is going to give an overall timeline of exactly what happened that evening. So I will turn it over to Shelley.
Thank you, Mayor. So I know there's been a lot of attention given to the officers who actually engaged in the shooting or neutralizing the shooter. I did want to be able to provide a summary of all of the work this organization did. It is, there was a lot of heroic service provided across the organization and across the region. So just to sum up a few things to help you understand or to highlight the total response we had. Helping the police department, there were 14 responding agencies from federal, state, county, and other local jurisdictions. The actions, a lot of the actions included, of course, engaging the shooter, but applying first aid, performing CPR, applying tourniquets, comforting victims, securing the crime scene, collecting physical and digital evidence, some of which the chief will walk through today, ongoing investigational activities, managing the message regarding the event and the investigation to the media and general public, and supporting their teammates through this very difficult time. The fire department was the first department to create the command post to integrate police and fire into a unified command. They responded, our Dayton Fire Department responded with 8 medic units, 6 engines, 3 ladders, and a lot of other specialized units to support the response to the event. Dayton Fire Department had 7 jurisdictions that sent 12 additional medics. 5 jurisdictions provided fire station fill-in and responded to a working structure fire on McLean Street. They also spent time supporting and continue to spend time supporting their teammates through this event and beyond. Recreation Youth Services provided facility support at the Dayton Convention Center for the Emergency Operations Center and Communications Center. They also provided space and coordinated with the Red Cross to create the Family Assistance Center, and they coordinated the press room where we did multiple press events. The Department of Public Works provided a variety of street maintenance activities and helped set up the stage for the Sunday night vigil. The Office of Public Affairs, City Manager's Office, Mayor and Commission Office, and the Law Department established and promoted clear channels for residents and media to get accurate and timely info, including live streaming, press events, and pushing out info on city social media channels and website. They also coordinated an enormous amount of media calls and ensured local and national media had access to city leaders. And finally, managed a great deal of donations and outpouring of public support and pushed out information to start the community in the healing process. So aside from the police officers who engaged in the shooting, there were literally hundreds of people within our organization and throughout the region who provided heroic service to address this tragic event. And now I'll turn it over. Oh, you're going to turn it over?
No, you got it.
All right.
I just said thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, good afternoon. We're going to provide an update on a couple of things here today. First, to give a little bit of an update, as you might understand that after an event of this magnitude, that preliminary information on casualties is preliminary. And so we actually had people who were walk-ons or walk-into hospitals asking for services subsequent to that day. So the total here is listed before you. I won't read that out in terms of fatalities as well as also non-fatal. These are gunshot wounds. So this is everyone killed or injured through a gunshot wound. In total, 26 victims, 15 female and 11 male, and you can see the racial demographic breakdown of all of those victims. We thought it was important to give you an update as complete as we can at this time, although I don't anticipate any additional victims necessarily coming forth. We need to be still open to that possibility, I will say that. There has been incredible interest by probably all media agencies on something called timeline. And I was asked a number of questions in really middle of last week about, can I confirm this video coverage of the individual with inside of Blind Bob's? And the fact that these folks were together, all three, the assailant, his sister, and his companion. And I made it very clear at that time that's relevant in terms of a point in time, but that's not really our biggest concern. Our concern was once they separated, then what happened, and what was that time frame? We now can fill that in. So you see right now, we are able to confirm the arrival of those three individuals in a vehicle that was parked behind in the Tie 9 parking lots. You know where that's at, I assume, most of you. And that was 11:04 because there was a parking ticket that had that time stamped on it. So we're able to confirm the time of arrival. We know immediately upon arrival, all three headed to a Blind Bob's and remained there until 12:13 a.m. when the assailant, in fact, left, went across the street to Ned Pepper's, where he remained until 12:42 a.m. He then goes back to the parking lot and then spends, this is back to Tie 9 where the vehicle's at, and he spends the next 8 minutes gathering content out of the trunk of that vehicle, in which he has also now changed attire. He has a very heavy backpack that he is carrying. He then goes to the rear behind Newcomb's and the Hart Mercantile location, and he is there for about 9 minutes. And it's at that point there's physical evidence. Not only is there video evidence, there's physical evidence to confirm that he was at that location, and we'll give you that detail in this presentation. And then at 1:04 a.m. he emerges behind the alley, and that's when the shooting begins. So this slide here is obviously an overhead view of the Oregon district where this incident occurred, covering all the way from the, if you look in the bottom left corner of this TV screen, that's the Tie 9 parking lot. So that's where the vehicle is parked. And now we will show you the path that all three took from that vehicle to Blind Bob's. That's this green line that shows their path of travel. All of this will be validated subsequently through video, and I'm going to ask Lieutenant Paul Saunders, who is the commander of Strategic Planning Bureau, who had a team of 6 people working on reviewing 250 gigabytes of video to try to determine path of travel, if we could identify the suspect and the assailant, his path of travel and time frames. The next blue line is when the assailant leaves Blind Bob's, goes across the street to Ned Pepper's, where he's there for roughly half an hour, and then goes east on 5th Street, down Jackson Street, and then west back through the alley where he had originally come the first time, but then turned to go up toward Blind Bob's when he was at that particular walkway. The next is his path of travel once he has obtained the weaponry, the backpack, his vest, this hoodie he put on. So this shows his path of travel from the parking lot back to the walkway right adjacent to Blind Bob's, where the shooting first begins and where 3 individuals were fatally wounded. Then across the street, there's additional victims along the north side of 5th Street, adjacent to and nearby Peppers, and there's another victim on the south side of the street in front of Tumbleweed, correct? Tumbleweed. This now shows, this is the video that was obtained from multiple businesses. I won't try to name them all, but these are the video, recorded video that was obtained and documented this time frame, these paths of travel, and the activity most particularly when the assailant left the company of his sister and his companion. So I will now have Lieutenant Paul Saunders come up to the podium, and he will walk you through the video, some of which we may have to show more than once. I will warn you in advance, some of the video is rather grainy. Some has really good clarity. So the way we're able to say this is the assailant is based on timeline of other video and other data points. So we're absolutely confident, even though the image seems to be indistinguishable of who that is, that we are confident that this is in fact the assailant who is being tracked by video throughout this gap in time from the time he left his sister and his companion and began shooting. Afterwards, when you had a chance to see this, and if you need to kind of rewind and see the video again, if it's hard for you to, it's hard for me, I watched it a lot of times, sometimes it's hard for me to actually see the movement and the individual on the video, so if we need to do a rewind, we'll do it. We will make this publicly available, so you will have it. So with no further ado, Lieutenant Saunders, I'll bring you up.
So a couple, before we get going, kind of housekeeping. When you see the video, and it's on the small TV because of the quality, we have different sources of video from the surveillance cameras. To get the best quality possible, we decided to go on a smaller screen for you because it gets real grainy if we get onto a big screen. The timestamps on the individual videos are, everybody had their own timestamp on their security videos. So with the resources we had available, we tried to sync them as best we could. So the times at the top of the slides are what we're going by. We've highlighted in yellow the different, go back one more, Matt, sorry. The different viewpoints that we have. The lower left right here is a residence that highlights the Tie Line parking lot. This is the record store video, highlights the Tynan parking lot. This is to the rear of Newcomb's. That's a very clear video. You're going to see that. That's one of our reference points. You'll understand what I'm talking about when we see some of the video that's very grainy. To the front is Blind Bob's. There's on the patio, and then there's on the front. We have Ned Pepper's video. We have video to the rear from the Hart Mercantile, and then the far right, top and bottom, are both Tumbleweed. Go ahead, go one more for me. So this first video is of the Tynan parking lot. This is a private residence. The highlighted yellow is where is a tree branch, but it's actually behind that tree branch is where the vehicle is, and you'll see the three people. That's going to be the shooter, his sister and friend. They're walking, so they're walking eastbound right now. Hold on a second, Matt. On the right-hand side for each of these slides, there's a thumbnail that shows the video that you're looking at, the camera viewpoint, and it will show the path. So to keep it in perspective and context. The next slide is going to be behind the Newcomb's parking lot, or Newcomb's in the alley. This is from their video. The video is very clear. You'll see that in a minute. This shows the three of them together. Please note the individual on the left is the shooter. He was wearing a shirt for most of the evening that has that very distinctive decal on the back that made it possible for us to identify him in several different video sources. Next. This is going to be a short clip of a video of inside Blind Bob's. You're going to see the shooter enter from the patio. The sister and friend are still on the patio. He's going to speak with the doorman for a minute. He's going to exit. The time that we have on this is about 13 minutes after midnight. He leaves here in just a moment. You can go ahead and click next. And now he, at 12:14, so a minute later, this is the shooter entering Ned Pepper's. He goes into Ned Pepper's. He's there for about 30 minutes. Ned Pepper's was very crowded, shoulder to shoulder. And then he leaves at 12:42. That's a key time also. Remember the 12:42 time, because we're getting closer to the point of when the shooting began. So the shooter exits, and we catch him on video going eastbound on 5th Street. You can see we've highlighted it in yellow right up here. You can see that shirt that helped us find him. He travels eastbound. You can see the patch on the right-hand side and the hook thumbnail. And then moves on. Oh, I'm sorry, back up one. I apologize. Another point to note. So he has just come out of Ned Pepper's. This is a video from actually Hole in the Wall, which is right adjacent to Ned Pepper's. The front of this is the police cruiser. This is where the police are. They're very visible at this point. So the shooter actually comes out of Ned Pepper's and walks right in front of that police cruiser. He's aware of where they were. I had to see him. Next slide. So this doesn't look like much, but it is his shirt you can see here. This is him in the alley. This is video that was caught from the rear of, this would be Tumbleweed. We know that's him because of the timing. You'll see in the next couple slides where it's very clearly him. This is video next door. This is from Hart Mercantile, still in the alley. The shooter is now walking in the alley. You can barely see it, it's very grainy. He's walking eastbound. He's walking back towards the car at this point. And then this is behind Newcomb's, very clear video. When he comes across, he's still walking eastbound. You'll note that he's still wearing a t-shirt. He's still in shorts. There's no backpack. It's 12:45 right now. We know that at this point, he's heading back to the car. We catch him in the alley. This is from the record store on 5th Street. You're going to see him coming from the left to the right. So then we're going to switch over to the private residence camera. That's the one you saw in the very beginning. He's behind the car. If you were on a high resolution screen, you can see through this branch that there's movement. It appears that he's walking around the car. It appears that the trunk lid's coming open and shut. He's there for about 8 minutes. And you're going to see him when he exits. It's going to take a second here, but when the video, we sped it up so you don't have to wait 8 minutes. But when he walks out, you're going to notice the key thing here is he's no longer wearing a short sleeve t-shirt, and he's now wearing a dark hoodie, and he has a backpack. We're going to look at the backpack in a minute. I don't know if you can see the movement on here, but there is movement right around the car right there. And here he comes exiting. So now he's wearing the backpack. He's wearing a long sleeve shirt. The path on the right-hand side shows how he went. He's going to cut back over to the alley. Next slide. This is from the record store, so we can catch him cutting that same path right here. And part of this was just verifying at this point that he had no interaction with anybody else. Here he comes. He's coming out from between the dumpsters in the building, and he's going. The thumbnail shows the path that he's going. Let me go to the next slide. So this is the video that's right behind Newcomb's. He's going to come from screen rights because now he's traveling eastbound, and you'll see that he has the backpack and he's in long sleeves, and the backpack is weighted down. It's not empty. So this is a key point here because, pause for a second, man. Thank you. On the thumbnail, you'll see that this camera view goes to the corner, which is this corner of this building. At this point, we lost him for about 9 minutes. We couldn't find him anywhere on the following video. Go to the next screen. So this is a viewpoint from Hart Mercantile, which should pick up, you'll notice right here, the opposite corner of that building. And you saw when he walked, we saw the image of him walking across the first time. We never could see him coming this way. The guys finally picked it up. Watch where we've highlighted the screen here. We'll probably have to play this portion twice. But when you play it, you're going to see him dart around the corner. And there it is. Pause it and go back and play it one more time. I'll play it one more time for those of you who couldn't see it. But he shoots around that corner pretty quickly. He was behind the building, behind Newcomb's, for about 9 minutes. And there he goes again. So, click next for me, next slide. This is the viewpoint behind, this is where the corner he just went around. We have a pretty good idea what he was doing there because as he shoots up this alley, probably not the right turn, but eventually he does actually shoot up the alley. But he comes up this alley. We know that he was probably charging his weapon, loading the weapon up, because the next day, as we're processing the scene, approximately where that highlighted star is or where this placard is, there is an unspent round. It's damaged, like it had to be ejected because it didn't charge properly. So that was recovered. It was one of a 223 round matching what the shooter had. So we're pretty sure that as he was turning this corner, he was probably charging his weapon. He had to probably recharge it. And the next video is going to show the reason why we think that as he was traveling up this alley is when he began shooting. So this is another one that we're going to have to show twice, and I'll tell you when, Matt, in a second. Because the first thing you're going to notice is the people. That's going to tell you when you actually have rounds coming down range. Then we're going to replay it, and I want you to follow the line that we've superimposed, and that'll show when the shooter comes through here. It's hard to keep track of both of them, but you're going to notice after you see when they start moving that the shooter doesn't actually enter the frame until after that happens. So this is the patio for Blind Bob's. Go ahead and click play for me, Matt, please. Now they're moving. They just heard shots. And if you would play again for me. So he's going to play it again. And now that you see him when they start moving, the best place to see him is right here. But he'll run this path. So then there he goes. And we know that he's been firing. Go ahead and pause for a second. Because just past this umbrella is the taco stand on 5th Street. That's where our first 3 fatalities occur. One of them is sister. So we also know from homicide television, from the eyewitness accounts, that as he's crossing 5th Street, which is right here on the red line, he continues to fire down 5th Street. And there's evidence of that that they collected also. Go to the next slide for me. So this slide that you're looking at right now is, we're going to kind of move you geographically down the street. This is from the hole in the wall, which is the store that is adjacent to Ned Pepper's. The cruiser I showed you earlier is actually, it's not in the picture right here, but it's because it's cropped. But the cruiser and the police will be right here. This is the crowd in front of the hole in the wall there. When the video starts, they are reacting, shots fired, and you're going to see the first response of the officers. Go ahead and hit play for me. So they've obviously just heard the gunfire. The first officer coming around this corner you're going to see will be Officer Rolfus, I believe. Followed by, I believe, Officer Denley, or the remainder of them will come out, will fan out right here. And you can see when, and this might stutter on me because this video does, but I didn't this time. So they're engaging right now. So this is the officers, and because later on you can barely see these guys from the shot that we have, but I wanted to start off because that was the first response. So the next slide is now from Ned Peppers, and this is now angling to the west. So the shooter is up the street. He's crossed Fifth Street. He's been shooting downrange or down Fifth Street. The officers are reacting. You saw Officer Rolfus. You're going to see him again. He's going to come up in this portion of the screen. We have had to redact some of this just because there's some sensitive material on there that we didn't think was good for the public. But you're going to get a pretty good idea of the path of the shooter and the first response of the officers. You're going to see Officer Rolfus kind of come up here, and you'll see on the right-hand side the path of Officer Rolfus approximate. So he's engaging him right now. That was the shooter that just went by. So Officer Rolfus came up, and then he has now just responded back. You want to play that again? Cut it out. I'll put you on. So Matt can play it again for me. So, and I put my hand away probably. There's Officer Rolfus that was right in the middle there. There's the shooter coming by. So he was engaged there. So we're going to go to the next slide, which is still going to be from, this is from Ned Peppers. This will be the end of this scene. So the first slide of officers I showed you was the officers all fanning out. So they're all up here. So next door is hole in the wall. This is Ned Peppers' front door. You just saw down here Officer Rolfus engaging the shooter as he was running on the sidewalk. So you're going to see the shooter continue to run right here, and it's going to end right here. Can you play for me? Pause it for me. So if you look at the thumbnail on the right, you can see that the shooter is right in front of Ned Peppers. The blue dots show you where the police are located on the thumbnail over here. By our best resources that we have at our fingertips, we believe that the shooting started at approximately 1:05 and 35 seconds. We believe it ended at 1:06 and 7 seconds. That's 32 seconds. Depending on which video you're looking at, our first engagement was about halfway through that. All of this data has been turned over for more technical analysis with the FBI. That'll take quite a bit of, it took us a while to go through what we've got, and we were just honing in on certain parts. They will be going through audio and syncing social media, which we've collected that also. But in a nutshell, this accounts for the shooter's movements from the time he arrived in the Oregon District to the time that the incident ended.
Lieutenant, you said the shooting started at 1:05. What again was the first time you saw him on video at all?
At 11:04 would be the first, 11:04, 11:05. That would be in the Oregon District parking lot. When that's the very first clip I showed you of him exiting the vehicle, that would be our first time on video.
Did you say 12:42 that you actually passed the police line?
The time on the, I got the timeline right here.
It's when he exits Ned Peppers. Yes. Well, the police vehicle and likely police officers at the same time.
Do you think he was going into Ned Peppers to chase it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a good, whether he had gone into Ned Peppers to case it, I think that's a strong probability. But let me also say that he was very familiar with the Oregon District, so this was not a place that he did not know.
Is there any chance that while inside Ned Peppers he had some sort of encounter or interaction with someone that could have resulted like this?
No, there's no indication that he had. He had contact with individuals in there, but there's no indication that any of those were of significance that would generate some kind of a response like this. This was a plan well before he got to the Oregon District.
What's the most important thing you learned from watching that video? I'm sure you can tell that. What did you learn from it?
Well, I think it was really important, were there co-conspirators? Were there some other folks aiding and abetting? We're not saying that this is the finality of that conversation, but clearly that day, during that time frame, we don't see anyone assisting him in committing this horrendous crime. So that's important information. It also, that plus some follow-up investigation, seems to strongly suggest that his companion had no idea what he was going to do, nor did he have any knowledge of the weapons that were in the trunk of that vehicle.
Do you think he knew exactly where his sister
Yeah, he did know where they were at, because they were communicating during this hour back and forth. One brief phone call, we don't know the content of that, that was his sister and he, so don't know what that content is. But also text messages also.
Did he say meet her at the taco stand, or was she just in line to get food?
No, there was no invitation to meet. There was a communication that from his companion that they were, quote, going to the taco stand, and that was about 7 minutes or so before the shooting occurred.
So with her being one of the first few victims, do you believe that he knew that was his sister?
You know, it's an interesting question, and I will tell you that a lot of us have been involved in this dialogue. I mean, we all have been reviewing this evidence, including the homicide detectives who are deeply immersed in this. We have radically different views in that regard. And if we can't agree on the interpretation of the evidence, where some are saying absolutely not, he was not intentional, and some saying no, it had to be, I would say it's inconclusive.
What are you referring to? We couldn't hear the question.
Well, it was the question whether the sister was an intentional victim, and his companion, who was also shot but survived. And I said basically the evidence has been debated in both directions, with individuals in our organization intimately familiar with the evidence, arguing both directions. And if we, based on what we know now, which is the key factor here, if we can't seem to make that call conclusively, that we're divided about how, whether that was intentional or not, I think it's inconclusive. We may get a better insight through historical data looking back, but based on the evidence from that night, I don't think we can make the call.
Is there any indication that the friend who was arrested on firearms charges Friday was at the site when this happened?
None that I'm aware of, no.
Officers fired on him off screen, right, first, and then.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Officers fired on him off screen first while he was up Fifth Street, and then engaged again when he got to the door.
Actually,
Yeah.
the officer was on screen on the slide, on the video you saw. The officer was on screen. The shooter would have been off screen initially, coming down the sidewalk.
And there's more video out there, by the way, so we're.
How big a part did the body armor play of not being able to neutralize?
Yeah, it's a great question, too. I would say that the body armor, because of the way it was worn, was vulnerable. And fortunately, we were able to take advantage of that vulnerability.
In the video where
How it was worn?
He had plates, but that's all. Ballistic plates.
Are you confident that none of the people that sustained gunshot wounds were not hit by police gunfire?
You know, that's something that the coroner reviews in his examination. He's not complete, and when he's ready to discuss, that particular, what the injuries were and cause of those injuries, then you can have that information.
Do you know who died at what time, the order of
We know, well, we certainly know 3 individuals who were shot immediately, right around Blind Bob's. So they were the initial victims. What is a little bit, I think, uncertain for me, I don't know if our detectives know. I mean, we have someone completely on the south side of the street in front of Tumbleweed, and everyone else is clustered on the other side of the street. So when that shot was fired, that's not really clear for me at this point, although.
She was mobile, so she was shot and ran quite a way, so they're still piecing that together.
Yeah.
in the video where he spoke to one of the people inside the bar, the
Mhm.
workers, have you been able to interview that person and know what they talked about?
Yeah, we have interviewed a lot of folks. I can't tell you who all we have spoken to, or if that person, what the content was. I mean, that's a level of detail we're not going to be able to provide.
One of the most important questions right now is motivation. Looking at this video, looking at other evidence you've had over the past 9 days, you've had probably lots of conversations about that. Any more insight about the possible motivation of these killings?
Yeah, and I've kind of tried to create a distinction here between motivation and mindset. I think it's an important distinction to make. Motivation seems to suggest this specific location, this particular night, these individuals who were victims. I think that's way, way, way downstream. That's not the level of clarity we will have now. We certainly don't have it now. And whether we ever have that is going to be, a question. Mindset, I think we have a lot of information about mindset, historical data about mindset and its progression. But I want to remind you that that is the principal focus right now of the investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So they're running with that. We need them to run with that. That's what they do best, amongst other things, by the way. But that is really their role, and we're going to allow them to do that.
Is there anything about the mindset at all that you can tell us?
I don't think more than I've already amplified it. There's this history of obsession with violence and violent ideations, the discussion of interest in mass shootings, and the expression of desire to carry out a mass shooting. I think that should be enough thematically that you should get a pretty clear picture of what was going on here.
Chief, I want to ask you again, that conversation that happened at the Blind Bob's with Dorman, you can't say now what the nature of that was.
I'm not aware of it. I mean, that would have been an interview by homicide detectives, and I don't have that level of detail. We really wanted to keep this, and I realize you have a lot of questions. We're obviously trying to fill in what gaps we can, but I will tell you that this was the next big, I think, chunk of the investigation that we felt comfortable of releasing because we have a high level of confidence it's accurate in terms of time frame and location and activity, particularly of the principal individual who is responsible for these mass shootings and these murders.
Is there any evidence that Connor Betts was a drug user?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some evidence of that. The question was that play in that night? Don't know yet, and that's part of a toxicology report that typically takes 6 weeks. The coroner late last week said he would hope to get it in 2 weeks. So that's an important piece, once again, to get some mindset. Won't know that for at least 2 weeks.
Did you find drug paraphernalia in the car or anything?
There was some evidence of drug paraphernalia, yes.
Chief, you said that neither of the conversations in either of the bars, nothing that would indicate that that's what caused him to begin shooting.
No.
He was pre-planned it earlier.
Yeah.
Any idea how much earlier? Like 1 day, 1 week, 1 month?
Hard to say, Mike. I can tell you he was in the Oregon District on Friday night. So what was his mindset then? I don't know. He was not unfamiliar with this area, and the fact he was there the night before, certainly have to consider there was some thought being given to it at that time.
In that 9-minute time frame that he was on camera that you didn't see him, have you had anybody say that they saw him or maybe with someone? Or?
No. In fact, Paul, your folks looked at, I don't think they saw anybody else in the alleyway during that time.
No, so there's two different segments of period that we really can't see him clearly, and that's one is when he's at the car with the branch in the way, and then you're talking about behind Newcomb's.
Yeah.
There were people in the alley, in the parking lot behind Newcomb's, Blind Bob's. There were some people back there. There was nobody that went back to the area from either side. We have video from the Newcomb side, and then we have the video from Blind Bob, or from Hart Mercantile, actually. So nobody went back there. There were no vehicles that came into play during that point. So he appears to be back there alone.
What did you mean by charged?
So to
Chamber round.
Chamber round. Basically, your bullets are in a magazine of some type. When you charge a gun, you are working the action so that one of the rounds goes up into the chamber of the gun so it can be fired.
Chief, how has getting into the cell phone changed this investigation for you? What have you learned that you didn't know before?
Was just informed. I talked to Todd Wickerham Sunday night because this was on my mind a bit, and had been informed then that he had gotten in the phone. I don't know there's a lot more detail. I don't have a high level of detail what was in there, but I don't have a sense there's anything that's particularly revealing at this time. They have to have an opportunity to go through that, and there's other evidence too they have to go through. So nothing that I'm aware of at this time that emerged of significance in its initial examination.
He had said to a number of people throughout the past decade or so had made references to some sort of mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware of any diagnosis, and if so, of what?
No, I'm not aware of any diagnosis. I am aware that he had undergone some treatment. And I can't comment further on that, but I am aware of that.
Do you think Ned Peppers was his destination?
It seems so. It seems so. Yeah.
Chief, are you thinking that he had the weapon in the backpack disassembled in that 8 minutes, or whatever that span of time was?
Correct.
He assembled everything?
Right. I don't think he could have put that weapon in its fully built-out state in that backpack and not have it sticking out. So it's, to some degree, I think it was disassembled. I think that's a pretty fair conclusion to draw. And of course, you had that drum magazine too. So, yeah, I think that's part of the explanation for the 9 minutes, right?
Right, and that's noticing the fact that the backpack appeared to be weighed down. So it's safe to say it was probably in the backpack, and we've checked with a lot of our weapons techs and the SWAT guys. They all kind of concur that most likely that weapon had to be broken down to some extent.
Is there any evidence that,
Wait, I'm sorry, hang on, Mike.
is there any evidence that Megan Betts had a chance to confront Connor when he was shot?
None.
Did she even recognize?
There was a question even of visibility, quite honestly, from that alley, because you have the patio blind bobs, you have all those umbrellas, kind of hanging down. Her and the companion are on the opposite side of the taco stand. So there's a real question, could he even see who that was on the other side? Which is why I'm saying the evidence seems to be questionable, although it's very clear 7 minutes before he started shooting, he knew they were there.
But they
So.
didn't know that there was any guns in that car.
No indication that they knew.
Did you learn anything significant from the companion?
That's still, like I said, it was a conversation in progress, but I think probably that of greatest significance, there does not seem to be any indication that he was aware, as I said before, the existence of the weapons in the trunk or what the assailant intended to do that night.
Did he say anything about why Bess had left them and separated?
No, I don't think. I mean, he may have, but if that was part of the interview, I'm not aware of the response.
Have you learned important investigatory information from any of the other people who were hurt?
That has been, I would say, a bit of a work in progress, and at this time I don't have that level of detail. I mean, it was literally, to now be able to tell you today, it's not 14 gunshot wound victims, it's 17. So just trying to get their identity, demographics, we need to get offense reports, we need to get medical records. I mean, that is a lot that goes into trying to establish what happened and how they were injured, et cetera. So.
Chief, just your thoughts on 1 week out, just your thoughts on the community, your police officers, and who we are.
Well, this community is remarkable, just remarkable. I'm amazed at their response, just amazed. It's so gracious, so grateful, so caring. So this is a beautiful community.
And what do you have to say about your policemen and women?
Wow. Yeah, their response was crucial. Their response was immediate. Their response was effective. Their response was compassionate.
I know you said originally that you were confident that Connor Betts had acquired these weapons
Mhm.
legally. Are you still confident in that?
Yeah, there's no indication that there was anything unlawful in the purchase or acquisition of those that I know of at this time.
But if he potentially was a drug user and filled out the form 473 and said he was not in order to get those weapons, could that potentially still be a possibility?
Could be. Part of that is going back historically and trying to determine that, right? And, was it occasional drug use or was it daily drug use? I mean, there's a lot of gap to fill in to kind of make that call.
Chief, when you say drug paraphernalia in the car,
No,
you're specifically referring to what?
Yeah. Well, I don't think we go into that level of detail, but I don't think it was in possession or was in a car. I thought it was on person. Do we know?
I would wait.
Did
Yeah, I can't, there was some found, it was a car of the person, so there's evidence obtained.
But not clear where you found it.
Or what it is.
So the focus of this.
I think anybody in the room knows. Somebody knows, but I don't know, okay?
Well, it's a
Yeah.
question that you guys brought it up.
Brought up what?
You said that you found it in the car.
Yeah, there's paraphernalia, there's no question about it, as part of the evidence is being analyzed, you know.
So is it fair for us to report you found it in the car or on the person?
We'll have to get back. I don't have that level of detail. And nobody in the room seems to have it either, so if none of us have it, we probably have to ask.
Thank you, Chief.
There.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's it. You guys don't have any other questions? You're good?
Mayor, can I ask you one
Oh.
question with respect of last week?
Yeah.
6 days since President Trump was here. Your feeling, was it a productive visit to the president?
Look, I think that the victims in the hospital appreciated the President of the United States coming. I think that the first responders appreciated it. I think it was difficult on the community because he has such a everyone has very strong feelings about the president, both positive and negative. And so when we're talking about bringing the community together, he's not helpful there.
Any plans at this point for the memorial permanent placement? You know, it's been moved.
Yeah, so I just met with some folks, a member of the Business Association. We're in the process of putting together a committee to discuss this, to make sure that we have a permanent site. We want to make sure that we have victim advocates there, the Business Association there, the city there, and then make that decision on the site. So we feel pretty comfortable. It'll be coming, but we're not moving like super fast at the same time.
Do you know who was in charge of asking or insisting that some things be moved around today?
Well, there was always the agreement that we would keep the site up until the funerals were complete. And, you know, a lot of the site had dead flowers, et cetera. It was looking a little rough, and I don't think that's how we want to remember victims either. So the cleaning of that up, I think, was just a timely part. We know that people are still mourning and grieving, so there's still space there. So that's not what was done, but, you know, we want to make sure that we honor these victims and their life in an appropriate way. Okay, thank you guys. Oh, Chief has one more thing.
Honest person.
Honest person.
Okay, that's the answer.
Just on his person. How's that? Have a good one, guys.